Hey everyone, I'm Amethescence, and thank you for helping me reach over 500 subscribers. And for this 500 subscriber special, I've decided to give my channel a little bit of a makeover, almost like an evolution. And to start off, I've decided to transform my persona into a PNGTuber using PNGTuber Remix. Now, transforming my persona into a PNGTuber has been something I've been considering for quite a while, but I've never had a good excuse to do so. I always thought it would cost a lot more money or be very difficult to make. But then I came across PNGTuber Remix, which is a free software that can be used to turn drawings into animated characters. It's not as advanced as what you might see from a VTuber, but it can be used for something more complicated than just 2 images. So that's what I set out to do. You've probably noticed by now that the persona I'm drawing in the speed paint looks a bit different than my current persona. And that's because I decided to completely redesign her. Hopefully the change isn't too abrupt. I began with sketching out some stick figures with different poses. This PNGTuber would be different than what I have right now, meaning not as many poses. So I needed to make sure I picked a pose that would allow for some versatility without needing to redraw everything from scratch for different poses. And so I decided on a simple pose where I have my arms crossed. Not only does it allow for versatility due to the visibility of the arms and the front-facing perspective, but it's also a pose I do a lot in real life. Then I went to the head and face, arguably the most important part of the design. Similar to my old design, I gave myself sharp eyes and glasses, but I also decided to change the shape of my glasses and the thickness of both my glasses and my eyebrows, mostly because I feel like both are hard to see in my old design. How obvious is it that my current persona is even wearing glasses? Half-rimmed glasses allow for thicker rims without it taking over the entire face or covering too much of the eyes. The more angular shape, I feel, fits better with my serious personality. My ears and hair I kept very similar, if a bit exaggerated. The ears are basically just bigger, but I gave myself a different hairstyle. I didn't want to make it too different from my current persona, so that it could still remain at least a little recognizable. If you didn't know, when designing my current persona, I went through a few designs, and I looked through these past designs as inspiration for this new one. I originally wanted to do this updo with the streaks, but I felt that would make this new design look too uptight. So instead, I let my hair down. You'll also notice that I've adopted a new style of drawing my curly hair. I like this way a lot better. Now onto my clothing. For this, I really wanted to focus on both parts of my name. If you didn't know, amethescent is a combination of 2 words, amethyst and crescent. Crescent as in crescent moon. I like both amethysts and the moon a lot, so the idea was to combine those. I feel like that doesn't come across very well in my current design, so I wanted to emphasize it in this new design. So that means more gem and moon imagery. I kept my gloves largely the same, but with the addition of moon-shaped cutouts. I also kept my shawl thing, but shortened it significantly and fastened it together with a moon. So it's actually more like a cape now. The rest of my outfit was not as easy to design. I played around with a few dresses until eventually coming across a slanted and slitted skirt design that I really liked. On top, I added belts and a bag that attached to the belt. And after finalizing the design of the clothes, I moved on to the line art and base colors. The most important part of this whole process is to separate all the parts I want to move independently, which also means I have to draw things in their entirety, regardless of if something is overlapping it or not, which takes a while. For the colors, my skin was basically the only thing I kept the same. The rest of the color scheme was very purple. Purple is my favorite color and was my favorite color a little over a year ago when I designed my current persona. So I don't really know why I decided to design her with magenta as her primary color. Not only is it not my favorite color, but it doesn't exactly give off a very amethysty vibe. It is a pretty color though. But anyway, I aim to remedy this problem with this new design. So there's a lot more purple and a lot less magenta. Another notable change is that I moved the stars from my hair to my skirt. I don't really have a good reason why, I just thought it would maybe look better as detailing on the clothes. Shading took quite a while and was pretty annoying. Not only was I rendering in a style more complicated than my current persona, but I also had to keep switching between all the different body parts so I could shade them. And of course, I had to make sure it all looked seamless, or as close to seamless as I could get. And after giving myself different expressions, I was finally ready to move on to PNGTuber Remix. Making a simple PNGTuber is pretty easy, as it's typically just 4 different but similar drawings. One with eyes open, mouth closed, one with eyes open, mouth open, one with eyes closed, mouth closed, and one with eyes closed, mouth open. This allows for talking and blinking, but I always felt that was too simple, so I wasn't really interested. But then I learned about PNGTuber Remix, which makes it so easy to make advanced animated PNGTubers and simple VTubers. And yeah, it was fairly easy, even though I was learning it for the first time. It only really took a few hours, and some of that time was due to little mistakes I couldn't undo because PNGTuber Remix doesn't have an undo button. First, I exported all my layers and put them all in PNGTuber Remix. It was quite a lot of layers, and I did name all of them to make it easier, so that took a while. Once they were all in, I reordered them and parented everything that needed to be parented. This basically makes it so moving the parent layer moves all of its children with it. So if the eyes are parented to the head, moving the head moves the eyes. Oh, and also I did have to re-import a lot of the layers. That was because I adjusted and tweaked different things to make them look better before re-importing. A lot of things look different in PNGTuber Remix because I used blend modes in Procreate that don't automatically transfer when exported. That was just something I didn't consider when drawing my design. Next, I adjusted every layer's anchor point, which tells it where to rotate. Then I was finally ready to animate it. PNGTuber Remix makes it very easy to add the animations that you want. I started with the animations that don't react to my mouse. For this, I played around with a bunch of different parameters to create this breathing effects. I did this by making things like my torso and head stretch and most everything else rotate. PNGTuber Remix automatically syncs the animation so it all looks nice together, even if you greatly change one of the parameters. Next were the animations that do react to my mouse. The good thing about PNGTubers is that you don't really need to worry about having any face tracking software or anything, as you can just link movements to your mouse. The biggest example is with the eyes. PNGTuber Remix makes this very easy, and I was able to quickly set up eye movement that follows my mouse. In addition, I also made it so that my PNGTuber leans towards my mouse with her body and head. The hair also leans towards my mouse in the horizontal direction with a small amount of delay. And that just really brought my PNGTuber to life. I also wanted to add a bit of wiggle to my skirt and other flowy bits, but that was a bit more complicated, and I didn't really want to go through all of that. From that, I added in all the expressions and some alternate poses, and I linked all those to hotkeys so it's easy to switch to them. And with that, I was practically done. All that was left was to set it up in OBS. I'm still working out the kinks of getting it to work well with the green screen, but for the rest of this video, I'll be using my PNGTuber as my persona. Also, if you're interested in making a PNGTuber like mine, these are the videos I used to learn, though they're a bit outdated. I'll also link them in the description as well as PNGTuber Remix. Now that my PNGTuber was done, I could work on every other part of my channel redesign. Starting with my profile picture, I still like the pose, so I aim to imitate that with some changes. The biggest difference is that my face is in a 3/4 view instead of a straight on view. My old profile picture also had a very bright, happy look. I didn't want to completely get rid of that expression, but I tried to tone it down a bit to look more mature. Next was my video background. Again, I still like the concept of my old one, but I didn't like the colors. It didn't really fit with the color scheme of my new design anyway, so it still has the same moon design and the same kind of fade in the background. I also kept the stars in the background but went about it in a different way. I used a different brush to make them look more like actual stars and also made them glow more. If you weren't aware, my previous background is animated. The stars blink, but it's not too obvious. I did the same thing here, though it's still not very obvious. But that's okay because I don't want it to take too much attention away from other things in the video. I did add a shooting star though, which I think looks nice. I also changed the color scheme of my logo, but that's all I did for that. Finally, I had to redraw my channel banner. I never really liked my old one due to the circumstance in which it was made. When I first drew it, I wasn't completely aware of how YouTube banners work. The idea was to draw myself with my arms on top of my name, but after getting a template for a YouTube banner, I realized that wouldn't work out if I wanted both my face and my name in the main part that gets seen no matter what device it's on. So instead of redrawing it from scratch, I adjusted things, so it doesn't look amazing. I also don't like the colors. So for my remake of it, I did a similar concept but kept the setup of a channel banner in mind. This time I chose a pose that makes a lot more sense, albeit simple. So I drew it up real quick, making sure my face was in the sweet spot as it should be. As for my name and title, I chose different fonts and modified my title a bit. Originally it was art and game design, but I changed it to storytelling, art, and game design. It just feels more accurate, as a lot of my most popular videos are my creepypasta videos. And I had this cool idea to create this smear effect behind myself in the text. I think it looks amazing. As for the background, I copied my past self by adding a bigger see-through version of myself and a gradient background. But that by itself looked boring, so I added a pattern that has my iPad that I draw with, notebooks, and game controllers. And voila! I was done with every part of my channel redesign. So what do you think? I'm very happy with how this all turned out and think it's a huge upgrade from what I had before. But with how happy I am with the redesign, it doesn't compare to the joy I feel at reaching 500 subscribers. It's crazy to think that less than a year ago I had just reached 100 subscribers. Your support through all this time has been invaluable and inspires me every day to keep working on my projects and providing content for you all. I can't wait to continue this journey. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and please consider liking and subscribing if you're interested in seeing more of my content. Take care and farewell.